In our efforts to determine if government should be responsible for education, we're going to look at what happens when people are left to educate themselves absent a formal structure or reliance on market-based solutions. I'm Pragmatic Penguin. Let's get to it. We see people taking up the mantle of education in their own homes often in society today. Some people read a lot of books, others watch videos online, and others will mentor, coach, or tutor. We're going to take a look at a lot of these and determine their effect on the first principle of non-zero sumness. If you're just now watching for the first time and wondering what the heck is non-zero sumness, no worries. It's just a term to describe what causes humans to cooperate rather than compete. It's our first principle because that is precisely why societies exist. For more info, look at the links in the description below. Now back to the video. We'll start with the elephant in the room, homeschooling. Specifically the incident of homeschooling where a parent takes it upon themselves to educate their own child. Now, this is of course nothing new. We see it quite frequently. But what about the effects? Is homeschooling at the societal level an effective way to preserve, distribute, and grow non-zero sumness? Let's start with the time consideration. It takes at least 40 hours a week for a teacher or parent to do independent research, curriculum building, lesson preparation, and evaluation if they want to maximize learning. This is unpaid labor for more than a decade. This gives us a problem of distribution since only higher income households would be in a position where one member could work without pay for such an amount of time, producing a class of children who are lucky enough to be educated and those who aren't. Is this inequality to the benefit of all? In other words, does it meet our standard of justice as fairness? It depends. If the educated are raised in a culture that promotes a positive set of values in which the educated class is benevolent and industrious, then it very well could. If instead, the culture promotes antisocial behavior that results in negative othering and narrow-mindedness, then we fall short of the standard and create an inherently unjust society. But that isn't a dead end. What if we are in a society that everyone could reasonably afford to homeschool their child? There's a few problems left over. The first is that not everyone who is a parent is cut out to be a teacher. They may desire to do something else, and they may not even know that when they decide to have a child. The human brain doesn't finish developing until at least age 25, which is about the average age of the person who decides to become a parent. This means that around half of parents decide to have children before their brains are even fully developed. People really aren't that committed to most things. For example, Americans tend to stay with the same employer for about 4 years on average, and change jobs 12 times in their life. Half of them will divorce after they've decided to marry, and along the way, half of them will change their faith, sometimes more than once. To educate a child for over a decade is a pretty high expectation to place on roughly half of the population, given their demonstrable aversion to commitment. But it isn't truly half, is it? How many parents would formally educate their children if it were not a requirement? Surely some would in order to give them a competitive edge. But where would they get resources? How would they verify their resources are good? Who's going to teach the teachers? To answer these questions, let's take a step back and look at self-education, since it is required for parents to homeschool their children in this setup. How do we direct our own learning? Here we have a high degree of variation, and once again, there isn't a terrible amount of guesswork because people do self-education all the time. The hard part is removing what public education has done to aid in self-education, since it is bound to affect it. Self-education begins with a desire to learn. A person must make the decision that they are going to acquire some piece of knowledge or develop some skill. The cause of this desire may be to increase their marketability and overall earning potential, or it may be personally satisfying for them. Now comes the tricky part. How do they indulge this desire? The most obvious answer is the internet. Google or YouTube something like, "How do I tie my shoes?" Boom, there's 1,000 videos on how to tie your shoes. There's also numerous books and even songs to help you remember. But here's the tricky part. Which one do you watch? Which book do you read? Which blog do you follow? How long do you spend learning? Now, with an example like shoe tying, you can trust the video that gets the shoe tied, and you know it was good because it stays tied. Even better, it might have taught you how to untie the shoe quickly at the end. That builds rapport, and now you're probably going to trust that source. Or at least you will eventually trust them if they help you figure out other things like how to grill a burger or how to blow your nose, and those also work. But not everything is so simple. What if you searched, "What is the role of government?" You find thousands of videos, you pick one, let's say the first one because YouTube put that there, and now you have an answer. Let's say that was an hour-long video. Are you done now? Do you fully understand the role of government? How would you verify the source is correct? If you look at more sources, how would you weight them against each other? Likely, you would pick the views that most resonate with you, which is where confirmation bias comes in. And let's just pull that thread a little bit more. Most people are well aware that people tend to consume media that confirms their own views of the world. What makes this phenomenon so insidious is that they are incapable of identifying themselves as one of those people. This results in a larger consumption of material on the same subject that confirms a specific conclusion and a dismissal of contradictory evidence. Without thoughtful exposure to opposing viewpoints, we create echo chambers where we become more and more convinced in our own correctness and the inferiority of those who disagree with us. When a person knows about 5 to 10% more than the average person they interact with on a given subject, they begin to view themselves as an expert and speak with more confidence, even when confronted by an actual expert, especially when that expert disagrees with them. This phenomenon is known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect, and it is one of the greatest threats to humans today. So let's step back for a second. What does this do to non-zero sumness? Well, it's a direct opposition to it. Echo chambers are by their very nature adversarial and create increasing controversy even with subjects upon which all reasonable people would normally agree. This will cause societies to collapse if left unchecked, because it deepens divisions and encourages competition where cooperation would be far more effective. It creates artificial resource scarcity in some circles while oversaturating others, which increases inequality, often to the detriment of the least advantaged members of society. And the divisions will cause negative othering to flourish, which results in callous and inhumane action, which further breaks down society. But that hasn't happened. Something is keeping it all together, and that something is government. Join me next time as we get to the point of it all, and look at precisely how governments can create an education system that preserves, distributes, and grows non-zero sumness. If you made it to the end of this video, I just want to say thank you for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe and hit that bell so you get more notifications and never miss out on more content just like this.